You're listening to the Roundup Podcast, a podcast on reaching the college campus, developing leaders, and sending out kingdom multipliers. This podcast is created by the Southern Baptists of Texas Convention and provided through cooperative program giving.
Well, howdy, friends, and welcome to the Roundup Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Tidwell. Thanks for joining us today. We do have a guest host today, Justin Smith. Justin, how's it going, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. It's great to have you on. Justin's been a guest with us before. Chase Abner, who's usually the co-host, wasn't able to be on this podcast. So I asked Justin. Justin's been just a great practitioner as a college minister and now preparing to plant in Austin, Texas. And so, Justin, why don't you just give us a quick snapshot of who you are and kind of where you're at before we jump in today.
Yeah. So I've been a college pastor in Waco, Texas for almost 7 years, and then have transitioned in the last year to preparing to plant a church in Austin in 2023. So I'm currently actually in Lubbock, Texas with Redeemer Church doing a residency here. And my wife and my two sons, Shepherd and Jude, are with me here, and we're excited. We're building a team, getting ready to go. And then also, I'm looking forward to taking over this podcast.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get a new name, with Justin Smith, and then next goal is to become church planting catalyst in Iowa. That's the next goal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey, man. Hey, if you want to take over the Roundup Podcast, just hold the name, keep the audience. Feel free to do it. If you just want to have me on as a guest host, I'd be really down with that. This is like our 45th episode, so it's like after a while, I'm like, man, everyone that I can think to ask, I feel like I've asked. So he's like, you're trying to keep getting new names. But anyways, maybe you could breathe some fresh wind into it. Now, Chase has really done that. In fact, that's why Chase was on. I was like, Chase is just, he's got a whole different network, whole different set of questions to ask. So maybe we need to bring on 3 hosts. Is that too much?
No way. Yeah, that's
no
way
way
too much, I think.
No
way. No way.
Okay.
No way.
All right. Well, dude, hey, I appreciate you being on. And if you're watching our YouTube channel, Justin looks like he's coming live from his bunk bed is where he's at. So
that's man.
That's actually a shelf, he said. We're pretty sure it's a bunk bed, though. So, hey.
I am 15 years old.
You are, man. It gives you more space to play with your cars. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, so that other laugh you hear in the background, that's Paul Worcester. Paul, thanks for coming on with us today, man.
Oh yeah, I'm super stoked to be with y'all, and I love this podcast. I've been listening to it, and yeah, so I'm excited to be on, man.
Dude, thanks for being on. And I just want to, by the way, Paul is the National Collegiate Evangelism Director for the North American Mission Board. We're going to get into a little bit more. I'm going to ask him here in just a second, just kind of give us a quick snapshot of who he is, kind of where he's from. But something that Paul doesn't know is that Paul was invited to Roundup last year, but he got sick. And so who filled his shoes in his breakout session was Justin Smith.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Is. And if you go on our Roundup resources, it will give you, it says, hey, how to share the gospel, Paul Worcester. But it's not Paul, it's Justin. It's got Paul's face on it, but the audio is
there
Justin.
You go.
So just
I
FYI.
am taking over everything.
Yes.
Yeah, you are. You really are. So
it's coming full circle here, man. I'm sure it's better than the one I would have given. So
I highly doubt that.
Well, Paul, we're glad you're feeling better. I know that's been like 7 months ago, but we're glad you're here today, man. And Paul, you're a very well-known person. You anybody that I would think to follow, you've already followed. You're everywhere, man. And so I think people have a little bit of an understanding about you, even those that are in the college domain. But man, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and kind of how you got to where you're at now, man.
Yeah, I grew up in a church planter's home. So I have a twin brother, David. So you'll see my brother David all over the internet, etc. And then my younger brother.
We need to interview David sometime too.
Oh, yeah, because he's in the church planning world, all that kind of stuff. So I learned so much just from him, actually. Yeah. He was in college, he was probably my primary spiritual influence.
Really? Wow.
And then I have 2 younger brothers that are twins also. and they do international ministry. And so they're less public with what they do because they operate in some more closed countries and things like that. And then my dad is like a church planting legend. Basically, he's planted, I think I lost track of exactly how many churches we planted together as a family, but it was close to 10 to 12, something like that. Awesome, so we would move every few years. And so I came to Christ at a really young age and had a real, genuine relationship with the Lord. But I didn't really have a lot of the stuff that I got once I went to college. So I kind of stagnated in high school. Wasn't having a quiet time, was struggling with a lot of things, but went to University of Oklahoma, and the director there, Max Barnett, he'd be another great guy to bring on. Yeah. Just a legend in college ministry, director of the Baptist Collegiate Ministry, met with my brother and I, and we had just got back from a winter conference, and this guy named Nick Ripken was sharing about the persecuted church and how people were risking their lives to share the gospel. And I see that as simultaneously like my reactivization in my faith. Like I just woke up, I realized if these people can risk their lives to share the gospel, like I can risk a little rejection by walking down the dorm hall, you know? And it was actually also at the same time, my call to ministry. I didn't know how to put words to it at the time, but God was just doing something really deep in my heart where I thought I wanted to do nothing else but expand the gospel and to do ministry 24/7. And so my brother and I, we started this dorm Bible study. It was a 4-story dorm. We knocked on every door every week. So we invited 100 plus guys to this thing. And we had about 30 of them show up, people coming to Christ. We were bribing them with free pizza. We were showing like Lord of the Rings clips and tying it back to the gospel, you know. I don't know if you remember that trend.
That's
you know? Awesome. And got to cast out our inner golem or whatever, you know. But then Max was like, he sat us down. He's like, hey, I love that you're doing this Bible study. I love that you're leading people to Jesus, but let me tell you about this thing called discipleship. And we were mind blown. Like we knew nothing about personal discipleship. So he started having us memorize verses. And he met with both of us. So my goal was just not to be the twin that didn't have his verse memorized. Like, you know, like that's why I memorized those passages. But over the course of that semester that he met with us, God's word just changed my mind. I was struggling with purity stuff and just memorizing scripture, sharing my faith, personally discipling people. And then from there, my brother and I kept up the crazy kind of bold evangelism, but we added the piece of the puzzle, which was the intentional disciple making. I read The Fuel and the Flame my sophomore year, and it's kind of ironic because that changed my perspective on ministry. But now I'm the author of the new edition with Steve Shadrach, and kind of full circle there. And we ended up seeing about 50 people come to Christ just as students. We were just sharing the gospel on camp, and then basically graduated, did some training with a local church in Norman, Oklahoma, and then moved to Chico, California about 13 years ago and started a collegiate ministry in partnership with the local church, kind of a hybrid model, church-based, campus-based. And we've since then, it was starting really slow, but since then we've seen about 1,000 students come to Christ, staff raised up, multiple ministries started, and seeing this movement of God. And so, then I started just halfway through, started lifting my head up, equipping collegiate leaders, wrote this little ebook that was basically an email that had about 20 attachments. and I would talk to people. I would be coaching guys like informally and just like, hey, did you get my email? Did you read all those articles, all those attachments? They're just like deer in the headlights. So I put it all together as a PDF and started sending that out. And then I got connected with Brian Fry and the Collegiate Collective. We put that as a real ebook. And then that's like thousands of leaders have read that, and just started pumping out resources like gospel appointments, things like that. And so I felt like this last year that God was calling me to move into full-time writing, coaching, consulting, because it was just nonstop opportunities. And I was going to go do that on my own. I already raised my support to do that. But then like a month before I was about to pull the trigger on that, Shane Pruitt called me up from NAMB and was like, described like exactly what I was feeling like God was calling me to do with the North American Mission Board. And so it's been about a year of us doing that together. It's brand new. We're kind of building a lot of stuff out, but it's been everything that we've hoped it would be and more. So we've trained hundreds of leaders since then.
Yeah.
So,
Paul, what do you see as in your role with NAMB? Like, what do you feel like is your primary objective with that? You know, you've been involved in college ministry, you know, via BSM, and then at your church in Chico with Christian Challenge, and you're kind of in this new role. Like you said, you just been getting a lot of opportunity, a lot of people using your resources. So, like, I don't know, what's the kind of a vision for that for someone that maybe is disconnected and really not sure, you know, maybe even what you do or what NAMB even does?
Yeah, our goal is to equip our main kind of people that we want to equip is the collegiate leaders. So the college pastors, and really we're trying to celebrate and champion all models of collegiate reaching. So the classic Baptist collegiate ministry model. And then there's so many offshoots of that, like BCM or BSM or whatever you call it. And then there's the church-based, and I'm so excited of what's God's doing across the nation in the church-based world. And Texas, I mean, what you guys are doing in Texas is one of the things I'm super stoked about. So this is not just because I'm on your podcast, but I really am genuinely like thrilled to see what God's doing through Roundup. And then some of these collegiate church planning movements, Resonate, Salt, Grace Point, et cetera. I could go on. The Well, you know, so there's a whole bunch of kind of just these outworkings and outpourings of God's Spirit on campuses. And I feel like God's kind of called us as NAMB and our team and even myself to be in those spaces, to encourage, to make connections, to add fuel to the fire. And so we're doing we just want to come alongside and resource, equip, actually in a lot of ways, even be a matchmaker, be like, we're going to bring key leaders together. We're going to do coaching networks. We're going to provide resources. I have one-day trainings where a lot of times it's a BCM network or a group of churches. They'll bring me in and I'll spend a whole day talking about how to create evangelistic momentum and disciple making movements on campus. And we've seen a ton of fruit from that. A few years ago, we started Campus Multiplication Network, which is a coaching network. Now we have about 300 leaders that go through a 10-month process of kind of, they have a coach, they have a cohort. It's basically, there was a lot of things like that in the church planning world. And so I took those pieces because my dad's in that church planning world. And I took a lot of that and I created something for collegiate ministry with a team. And now we have about 300 leaders that have gone through that process. And we're in about 11 to 12 different countries. So it's global. It's like a global movement. Awesome. We're praying will be, and so NAMB will come alongside that as well. And we even started our own coaching network, kind of a 201 that I think will be really relevant to church-based leaders as well. So we're calling that multipliers. So if you're interested in that, anyone's interested in that, they can email me directly. And right now it's invite only, but invite yourself, like hit me up. Like I trust, so I'm happy to kind of put that out there that we do have some slots available. So
if you're out there, shoot your shot. Just email Paul.
So Paul, I'm extremely excited about what God's been doing through you. I've been a beneficiary of your ministry, gotten to have conversations with you, learn from stuff that you put online, all that stuff. I'm curious though, like in your time as college minister, campus ministry leader, working with college leaders and college students, how has this affected you as a disciple? Like how has it transformed the way that you walk with Jesus? You mentioned how Max Barnett kind of transformed the way you view evangelism and discipleship. How have you grown as a disciple of Jesus through working with college students and in college ministers?
Oh yeah, I mean I feel like I'm so indebted to that. I mean, it's where my life was transformed. It took from kind of just I was moral. I was trying to be moral, but I didn't have the tools and the resources to really, I came across actually a lot of resources by Cru at the time. I wasn't ever involved in Cru, but things about the spirit-filled life and confessing sin and living an open and honest life before others. And there was kind of like, I don't know, God just brought in all these different kind of, in my relationship with Steve Shadrach, who is a college ministry kind of legend in the campus ministry world specifically. He became a mentor to me a few years ago. And so, but basically it's all about staying focused. Like the thing that I would kind of sum it all up is staying focused on the basics. Like, so having that daily time alone with God, memorizing scripture, sharing your faith as a everyday lifestyle, personally pouring in, discipling. And so really the biggest part of collegiate ministry, and even any sort of ministry you're doing, is modeling it life on life, starting slow, going deep, and then trusting God to build the multiplication, because multiplication takes time. And so I feel like there's so many like fads and trends that come and go in the ministry world, especially in the church world. There's kind of so many of those, but at the end of the day, it's all the same stuff. Like the stuff that works is like genuine passion and prayer, like a passionate prayer life. And recently that's something that God's been building in my life, just a deeper burden and a deeper desperation for God in my own prayer life. And that's not something that came from the college ministry. I mean, that's just, actually it came from the college ministry world, because I don't think you can do college ministry and be faithful without God breaking you in some way, without spiritual warfare happening in your life, because Satan's not going to let the most strategic demographic in the world go without a fight. And so I think there's a lot that God wants to do in collegiate leaders' lives, in their lives, before he'll actually work through their lives. And so that's something that's why I love to be in that space, because it's not just strategy and tactics and tools. It's also like a lot of what I get to do is pastoral, in a sense, where I get to talk to guys, talk them through their struggles with time management, or even just heavy stuff, that just like working through things that that the behind the scenes that we all deal with. But it's really interesting. I think that spiritual warfare dynamic is something so real, and that I think it doesn't get talked about a lot. So
No, it definitely doesn't. And I feel like, usually wherever you see the Lord really moving, there's typically always spiritual warfare, kind of tied in with it. Something's usually going on. It's like, if God's really up to something, the enemy just hates that. And I think, as you said, Paul, the most strategic demographic, in the world, I think all three of us would agree, is we believe it's the college student, and Satan wants to, if he knows that this is the most strategic point, the most formed, moldable point in their life, if he can just warp that for the few years that would set that trajectory, that's a big win for him. And so there is a lot of spiritual warfare, I think, that happens and with college students. But Paul, let me ask you this. So you're very involved in BSM, and you were in Chico, and kind of largely what you were doing. I think you were the director of the Christian Challenge there.
Yep.
Let me ask you this question. So why did you choose that route versus like going and being a pastor at a local church, or being a college pastor? Was it just this was the opportunity, or was there some real philosophical reasons on, hey, I would rather do this than that?
Yeah, not so much a philosophical reason there. Just it looked like a good opportunity that was available. It's the pastor of the local church here was just kind of a church plant at the time, Chico Community Church. They've been praying for years for a college ministry to partner with them. And it happened to be my wife's dad that was the pastor. And I was 25 at the time. And so I wasn't looking to start a church yet, because I just didn't feel like I was quite ready. And I like the prospect of me being under. And that's why I kind of describe it as a hybrid because we were so connected to that one local church. And we were going to that church. All of our staff ended up going to that church. Probably 90% of the students kind of funneled into that church. But being a Christian Challenge, raising our support, we were able to bring on multiple staff. I was able to lead in a unique way that I wasn't on staff with the church. I was the director of this kind of this ministry, this campus-based ministry. And so we were also able to get funding from, there was a bunch of other smaller churches in our region that they would partner with us. They would support what we're doing. So it kind of, I think a lot of times the situation and the model determines the method. And I believe there's a lot of freedom in how that actually, all the pieces come together for that. So
nice. I wish Chase articulates this way better than I ever would, but he says, and I'm probably going to botch this and he'll tell me about it later, but basically it's like, a lot of campus-based ministry or even parachurch ministry exists because there was a point in time where the church just wasn't addressing something. It wasn't focused on something. So I thought, let's start this so we can have a singular focus on this one thing, whether that be evangelism, discipleship, or some kind of compassion ministry or something like that. And so that's kind of how that was probably birthed for a lot of different campus-based or even parachurch ministries. And then you have so they're really focused, and then you have like on the church side, there's kind of this the argument of like, well, we need to have students in the church to give them a long-term vision of discipleship and a commitment to the local church. And so I just want to ask you, like, what has been, when you see these two different kind of models of college ministry, what do you see as, like, how do you see these working together? How do you see these two working in kind of unity, and how do they both benefit, kind of thing?
Oh yeah, and again, I kind of bring it back to the campus and the situation, and there's like in California, like that. I'll just take our example in Chico. There wasn't a lot of healthy churches in the city of Chico, period. And not to mention Baptist churches, which we were trying to partner with SBC and all that. So our model kind of was birthed out of the opportunity that was there. And I think that's the way it's kind of shaped out a lot. A lot of times there is smaller churches kind of in a region that they want to contribute to something that's happening on the campus, and they'll partner together with the BSM or the BCM. And then there is larger churches that are able to fund and to, they want to do their own thing. And I see that there's multiple expressions of collegiate ministry and reaching college students as a huge win. I don't see it as a competition at all, especially if you're trying to go, like, the average college campus is 5% reached. Okay. So about 90, if you're going for the 95% that's unreached, then we don't need to worry about who's fighting over that small sliver, that 5%. And so it's called the blue ocean strategy. And so basically the red ocean is where all the sharks, everyone's fighting over all the fish and everything. And then there's all this vast blue ocean that can be fished and to go for. And so if your ministry, church-based, campus-based, collegiate church plant, if it's focused on reaching the 95% that no one else is reaching, then man, like, the model really comes second. The mission comes first. And so I think there's so much room. Actually, when I moved to Chico, there was a handful of ministries already on the campus. But a guy that was leading one of the existing ministries came up to me and he was like, "Oh, another ministry on campus? Like, we're going to hit oversaturation really soon." And so I call that the oversaturation myth. It's just a myth, that there's all these, there's these students that we're fighting over. And so, I do think, like, it comes down to the leaders, the church-based leaders, the campus-based leaders, having good communication with one another, looking for ways that they can partner when that makes sense, but not being like, I think there's some kind of older mindsets of like, we have to do it a certain way. Like the campus, like let's slice it up. The campus-based people are supposed to do this. The church-based people are, when really there's so much ministry, so much opportunity that we at times we need to go back to the drawing board and just get your vision from the Lord and learn from all stripes and all. That's actually, I've benefited so much from learning, even applying church-based principles to my campus-based ministry and and I think vice versa. There's a lot of examples I could share where learning from one another, having an open hand. And then if you have multiple ministries, even from the same denomination on the same campus, man, that's not a liability in any sense. That's an opportunity. But sometimes the stronger the leader, the stronger the personality, and so the stronger the vision, the less likely that they're gonna this is like the dark side of some of that stuff, so that's something I do think there needs to be a strong dose of humility and just camaraderie that happens on each particular campus, where collegiate leaders can get in the same room, pray together, encourage each other, talk about partnership opportunities, and just have this open hand about, hey, we're all here. Actually, I was just at Fort Hays State, and there was a Christian Challenge and a really large church-based ministry. Both of them are some of the like really impactful ministries, I would say, across the nation, but they're on the same campus, small campus. But we did this one, I came in and did an evangelism training for both of them. They called it One Campus, where they were just like, we're not gonna unite and do one big large group meeting, and we're gonna do our own ministries, but we're all in this together to reach this campus. And that's so right. I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities in those veins. So
Paul, I got two follow-up questions to that. The first one's kind of around that unity and partnership working together, and then the next one is about how churches can learn from campus-based ministry. So let's the first one. So you mentioned kind of this desire and the desire that you have, and the advantage that I think ministries around a college campus could take advantage of by partnering with one another. That's something that I strongly benefited from in Waco in the past 7 years. There was a strong sense of unity and partnership between the church-based college ministries and the campus-based college ministries, and we saw stuff happen, and I think more students reached that we wouldn't have seen if that partnership didn't exist. Right. But there's a lot of folks, I think, a lot of college leaders who are in context around certain campuses where there's probably, if not full-blown like spirit of competition, just kind of this kind of shallow, they're on the same team, but they don't actually do anything together. We root for them, but we don't actually know them very well. And it can be very difficult for a college leader, a collegiate ministry leader to know how to, like, if they've got a desire to see that partnership and unity happen around their campus, but they don't know like what to do to cultivate it. What would you say? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but like, what would you say?
It's easy.
What are there some of the next steps that they should take to try to cultivate that partnership and unity among the different ministries around that campus?
Yeah. Actually, Steve Shadrack and I just interviewed a guy named George Verwer on our Campus Ministry Today podcast, and he has this word that he uses in this. He calls it messiology. So realizing, and because he started one of the biggest mission movements in the world, Operation Mobilization, and he has all these stories of these different kind of groups coming together, and it's always messy. Like, we are sinners in a fallen world. Yeah. And there is going to be I can almost guarantee on every campus, there's going to be someone that really, a collegiate leader that just unfortunately doesn't play well with others, and kind of is going to turn up. And at the end of the day, we have to zoom out and think, okay, if, whether by false motives or true, I rejoice that Christ is preached. Mm-hmm. And so if students are getting saved, if they're getting if they're coming to get discipled and they're growing and they're getting plugged in, like we have to just celebrate that and keep a bigger picture kingdom perspective, because it's so easy to have a scarcity mentality in how we lead our ministries, where we're like, I just be honest, like when I was starting our ministry, especially when you're in the launching phase, when the biggest cool ministry at the time, which now I thank God for them, because now I'm so grateful they were there to kind of suck up all the cool Christian kids. so I could focus on doing things that actually reach non-Christians. And so it actually forced me to lead and to launch my ministry in a way that wasn't just setting up shop and doing sumo wrestling or whatever, it was a lot more focused on reaching the lost. But I still would get bummed when that cool Christian freshman's like, oh, this is a future staff member, or he's a really connected, get plugged into that ministry after I like led him to Christ and all this stuff, and he's like, oh, hey, cool, this ministry's got more cute girls, so I'm gonna go over there. It's like, oh, like but at the end of the day, like in the gift of perspective years later, I'm praising God for that. I'm very grateful for that, because we were able to just discover and build a true movement of God that comes from conversion of lost students really coming to know Christ, getting plugged in. And actually non-Christians and new believers, they're the best people to build a movement on, because they don't have all the baggage of the Christian culture. They don't know it's not normal to share your faith. They have the most non-Christian friends, and there can just be this groundswell of awakening on campus. So like the last several years, we've seen hundreds of students come to Christ, and our first batch of leaders and even staff were all people that we led to Christ by just rolling up our sleeves and sharing the gospel personally for years, just tilling that soil. And then eventually we saw this, we're seeing this movement of God on the campus. It's actually spreading out to other campuses now.
Love it.
But kind of back to the question, is that we want to move with the movers in that sense. So you may not be able to get every ministry on your campus on board with kind of this, but like look for opportunities, the ones that will, and the ones that do want to be a part, and do some things together. I think another extreme is trying to do too much with all the ministries together. That ends up kind of diluting some of the momentum that you can have as an individual ministry as well. So that's kind of another topic, but I do think that you want to find the sweet spot of what it means to partner on your campus.
Yeah. Okay, so second question, kind of unrelated. You have spent primarily, you spent most of your time primarily in campus-based ministry. I'm a local church guy. I was saved at a BCM when I was in college, but my ministry career has been local church all the way. And this Roundup Network, the podcast listeners, probably I would bet, Mitch, you can tell me if I'm wrong, most of them are local church collegiate leaders. Yeah. What can a local church, what can guys like me learn from guys like you who are just kind of in that parachurch ministry, campus-based ministry world? What are the things that we can look at you guys and think, okay, we can take that and we can contextualize it to our local church setting and we can run with that?
Sure. Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah. I think campus-based ministries they're very good about looking at the campus as a mission field. So they're not as concerned about what happens internally in their I'm going to kind of go with the positive stereotypes or like the positive trends of what campus-based ministries tend to, the ones that are doing it well, this is what they do. They look at the campus as a mission field and like divide it up into these little people groups, more or less. And they use missiological principles to kind of build laborers into, like our goal at Chico State was to have a laborer in every single affinity group on the campus. So a team of laborers. The harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. And so we had 30 fraternities and sororities on our campus. And so our goal was to send in, actually, we recruited students to rush those fraternities and rush those sororities, even as student leaders, mature Christians, to go in and start Bible studies, start making disciples. And our goal is to get in every single fraternity and sorority on that campus and have Bible studies and missional living. We're in about 5 right now, but we're seeing like these mini movements of God. Also the athletic teams, the dorms, every major. And so actually we'll literally get the students together and make a list of every single affinity group on the campus, and then say, who do we know that's in the lacrosse team or whatever. And so we don't know anyone. Okay, who we kind of adjacently. Okay, well, let's pray for them.
Who wants to play lacrosse?
Exactly. And just even that act of kind of like making your list and seeing where we have connections. And then we even ask questions like, which one are the most influential? Which ones have the most people? Kind of thinking through, helping the students think in that missional mindset. And then training them, like the student leaders are all well trained to share the gospel, not only to people that come to our weekly meetings, set up gospel appointments, which you can check more about that at gospelappointments.com. I feel like I've kind of talked a lot about that. So if someone really wants more info on gospel appointments, they can go to that website and check out a bunch of resources there. But sharing the gospel personally, intentionally, but also as a lifestyle. And so we have a whole worksheet called the Personal Ministry Target Worksheet that I think actually a lot of church-based ministries are picking up that and saying, hey, we don't have to like this is our mission field too. And there's plenty of room to work on the campus. And actually a lot of campus-based ministries are not doing this strategy. And so there's so much room to reach. So that's one. Another one is the use of conferences and summer projects. So like the strategic use of winter conferences, fall, a lot of ministries, church-based ministries have a fall retreat, but like a big winter conference where multiple ministries and churches come together and there's great speakers and, there's like Passion kind of provides that in a way, or cross conference. There's different ones that crop up, but when you think about movements like Crew or, they have these regional conferences that provide like I was called to ministry at a winter conference with the BCM. So that's something to consider is where are those opportunities in your church-based ministry, and what are some strategic ways to do that? And then summer projects, summer training, not just sending them on mission trips, but real training experiences. And so I was actually just hanging out with Summit Church, and they have 38 staff. So it's a unique situation. They're in the Raleigh-Durham area. They've got JD Greer is their pastor. It's like they got a lot of things going for them. But they do this summer project called City Project over the summer, where lives are changed. It's local, and they do little mini trips throughout the summer. And then we do one called Chico Project, which is in Chico all summer for 8 weeks. And it's 3 nights a week of training. And so I think there's something about a training-focused summer project that church-based leaders could adapt, that campus-based leaders have been doing for a while. But I'm seeing a new trend of churches saying, hey, we could host our own summer project. Even Mitchell at Austin Stone they just did their own a couple years ago, did their own summer project. And then the third thing I would mention, I could go on about this, but the third thing I'll mention is support raising staff. That's another thing to prayerfully consider, is how could you get permission basically to bring on an internship program, start with that maybe as a church base, and then so get support raising staff. Like when I was at Summit this last week speaking to their 38 staff, almost all of them were personally support, even a huge church, a mega church. All those staff were all personal support raised. And so you're able to do a lot more ministry with more staff. And so that's one kind of innovation that could be kind of adapted, and I'm seeing it adapted. Salt Company uses support raising. It's kind of something you have to navigate. with your elders and pastors. But I think there's an opportunity there in the support raising piece to open up just an unlimited amount of laborers on a particular campus.
Yeah. That's really good. I feel like I've seen in a lot of churches there is some are really good with support raise, and then you have some that have leadership that's like, no, don't want anyone asking for money and anyone, and so there's always kind of a friction there of seeing guys navigate. And I think that's some of the with the campus based versus in a church base is they're kind of in two different systems a little bit as far as even who they're answering to and some of the other things that happen there. But man, Paul, those are all like really great great ideas for churches and wisdom. Is there anything that you would say is maybe a blind spot for churches? You say now that you're in the seat with NAMB, I'm sure you're you're talking to probably more churches than you ever have. Is there something common that's maybe a blind spot, or just say, hey, if you're a church-based guy like gal, this is something you need to think about? Anything comes to your mind?
Not really, not particularly that comes off the top of my head right now, but it is easy. Like just kind of this is more of a warning, kind of like it's so easy to fulfill a role or a job description as a college pastor. When you're on a church staff, there's staff meetings, you gotta be a part of all the different stuff that the church internally is doing. And then if you've inherited a ministry that someone else started as a collegiate pastor, you have a whole system and meetings that you're running and all that. And it's so easy just to kind of fit into, see it as a job instead of a mission and a calling. And
good word.
That's my challenge to any college pastor is ask God, get with God and ask him to expand your vision for what he could do on your campus. Ask him to break your heart for the probably 90+%. I'm talking to a lot of people from Texas, but easily 90% of the campus does not have a relationship with Christ. And so when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion. And so when he sees, I just ask God to break your heart for what breaks his. And then the mission comes first, and then the method comes second. And so if your heart is burning with a passion to reach the campus, that's going to be contagious with your student leaders. And if you have the freedom to run towards that vision with your church, I think there's exponential, untapped potential for church-based ministries across the world. Actually, I think one of the next movements of God on college campuses is going to be through church-based ministries, and the church planning that can happen. That's one of the advantages is there's this pipeline that can be developed and just seamless into the church. And like Justin, you're a great example of that, is someone that's in that pipeline in a church like Redeemer, right? That's that has that vision to not only reach college students, but plant churches that are going to reach college students. So I'm just super thrilled about the potential. That's good.
Can I ask another question? So let's, if we got time, Mitch,
sure.
We talked about I love the question, the blind spot for local church leaders, and then what can local church leaders learn from campus-based leaders. But one of the things, I'm friends with a lot of BCMers and a lot of parachurch type leaders, and I think one of the questions that they often have, or some of them probably aren't even asking this question, so you could address that if you want. But I know you have a passion for students being involved in the local church and being connected to the local church. I know that's a big priority for you, and Christian Challenge is a big priority. And so, but there's a lot of campus ministry guys who are, they're raising support either for themselves or for the ministry. They answer to some sort of association that is asking them about numbers, asking them about these different metrics that they've got to meet. And there's a lot of pressure to make that ministry successful in the eyes of those people or whatever. Right. And oftentimes I think what gets lost is this priority of connecting college students to the local church. How would you say what if someone's asking that question, someone's asking us, okay, how does a parachurch ministry connect students to the local church? What would you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've noticed a lot of the I would even use the campus-based terminology more than parachurch, just kind of for future. It's just like I've gotten feedback from a lot of the BCM guys. They're like, "Hey, don't say parachurch."
I'm done now.
Anyways, but I do think, it again, it all rises and falls on leadership. The leader they have to be a churchman, so to speak. They have to be someone that is all in. Like Max Barnett was like a great example of that. Like he built that movement on the campus, but he was like, you have to be involved in this church, a church. And the one he went to ended up being the one most people went to and were part of. We would pack out this, like, I remember going to this 6 a.m. Men's fraternity meeting, and there was a ton of the BCM guys going. If you know what men's fraternity, it's this ministry for men, and it's a really cool deal. But there was a ton of the BCM guys that were involved in that men's ministry, and so that was a good example of, hey, let's be all in with whenever the church has something, whenever the church has opportunities. Let's make sure that we're creating space, because I think that's the thing that campus-based leaders need to realize is they can't just monopolize all the time of the students, because then they won't have margin to live on mission. They won't have margin to engage and be a true member of the family of God, which is the local church. And so and I think on both sides, it's more, again, like the family idea of church, the mission, kind of we're on this mission together, more so than the programmatic side of things, like lean. And I think that's what this generation longs for, is less about programs and more about like the community that you're running with and the accountability and kind of having this. That's one of the things I love about college pastors is they have that pastoral mindset, and they're seeing that through those eyes. And so I think that's something, like, every student needs a pastor. They don't just need a kind of evangelistic apostolic guy to fire them up to share their faith. They also need pastors and mentors and multi-generational relationships from like people in the church. And so, like, anytime like at Chico, I can kind of speak to what we do, is like anytime the men's ministry, the women's ministry does something, anytime there's opportunities, like our ministry basically runs the kids zone on Sunday morning. Like, it's like all, like, you walk through I drop my kids off and I'm like, hey, I discipled him. I led him to Christ. It's like, it's really sick. And then our pastors speak regularly at events, and it's actually our senior pastor is the fall retreat speaker every year. It's like, and so there's different ways to kind of, if your goal is to funnel people into the church, then man, let's find the most strategic way. Our summer project is very local church heavy. They take several, opportunities to invest in students throughout the week. I think there's a way for, there should be a lot of partnership and a kingdom-mindedness and open-handedness on both sides, for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. So good.
Oh, man. Well, Paul, thanks for your time today, brother. It's been a joy to talk with you, just to be a friend with you. And one of the things that I just really appreciate about you is, I know you're a great practitioner, but I appreciate, just the audience that you have and the fact that you're keeping college students at the forefront of the minds of campus-based and church-based ministries. Saying, hey, don't forget about this strategic mission field to go make disciples, to send to the ends of the earth. So we're deeply thankful for you, and man, we just appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today.
Awesome. No worries, man. If I had 100 lives, I'd give them all the college ministry.
Same, man. Same. And hey, Justin, thanks for being a guest today, man. Guest host. You were awesome.
Hey, yeah, man. That was fun.
Good job. All right, I'm going to send my podcast equipment to you, and it's yours from here on out, brother.
All right,
so
sweet.
Best of luck. If you need anything, let me know. No,
you're gonna have to connect me with everyone.
Yeah, you got it, man. Hey, I don't mind doing that. No, appreciate you, man. Well, hey, friends, thanks for joining us on the Roundup Podcast today. It's been a joy to sit here with Paul and Justin and get to talk through just the differences between campus-based and church-based and things that we can learn from each other as we seek to unify to reach this same demographic, to make disciples, to send to the ends of the earth. So, friends, thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to follow us on social media at SBTC Collegiate. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We put these podcasts on video. We'll put them there as well. And don't forget, Roundup will be May 11th through 13th. We're going to have that in DFW here in Texas. As this podcast we're recording this right now in December, but it should launch in February, and so we should have that location specifically nailed down by then. But you can check our website, sbtexas.com/roundup. So, hey friends, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.